I'm only posting this now because my therapist swears that putting it all down in black and white will keep the memory from firing every time I hear shoes on concrete. If you've ever worked nights, you know the weird floaty hour between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, where the world feels paused. That's exactly the pocket my brain drops me into. Fluorescent corridors, stale coffee breath, and the humming emptiness of a half-lit hospital. 6 weeks ago, I finished charting overtime on the cardiac floor at St. Hilary's. The sun wasn't up yet, but the early bird nurses were, so I decided to sneak out before someone begged me to help with rounds. St. Hilary's sits in the middle of downtown, so staff parking is a 6-level concrete wedding cake buried underneath. Budget cuts killed the attendants and half the cameras. Management says badge access is enough. Usually it is. My routine's simple. Check the panic button on my key fob, grip the mag light I keep in the outer pocket of my tote, breathe through the decaf jitters, and imagine breakfast with my kids. The garage was quiet except for the exit ramp alarms chirping whenever commuters swiped out early. I was 20 steps from my car when I noticed him. A guy in crisp khakis and a navy polo leaning against a pillar, phone glowing under his chin. Nothing about him screamed threat. In fact, he looked like the stock photo you'd use for a friendly consultant. But that was exactly wrong for 5:12 on a Tuesday. Nobody's that fresh after an all-nighter. Our eyes met. He smiled the polite, "Do I know you" smile hospital people practice on visitors. I offered the same smile back, kept moving. My Civic beeped twice, but instead of the engine turning over, I got one sad cough and a dashboard full of Christmas lights. I swore. Popped the hood more for the illusion of control than anything else. No service bars on my phone. That corner always dead zones. Behind me, phone guy pocketed his cell and ambled closer. "Need a jump?" he asked, voice smooth like iced tea. Every hair on my neck lifted. The battery had been fine at midnight. Gut said no. I lied that a coworker was already on the way, slammed the hood, and hit lock. He shrugged, turned toward the stairwell that leads back into the hospital, not the street. The second he reached the bend, he took off at a sprint. His footsteps echoed up, then down, like he was looping the floor. I gripped the mag light, slid into the driver's seat, even though the car was dead, and tried the horn. Another sad wheeze. A full minute passed. Then the rear passenger window shattered inward. A tire iron thunked onto the back seat. Before the sound finished rebounding, he was at my door, eyes wide, sweat beating. "Wallet, phone, keys," he hissed, but his gaze locked on the ID clipped to my pocket. He said my name, first and last, like tasting it. I flung the door open, catching him in the shin, and swung the flashlight. It cracked his forearm. He yelped but grabbed my scrub top, yanking me half out. Training kicked in. Drop weight, twist, knee to groin. It worked on the foam dummy in HR class. It worked on him too. He folded, cursing. I bolted. The exit ramp was bumper to bumper with day shift cars creeping upward. I waved, screamed. Nobody looked. Windows up, playlists loud. I reversed course, sprinting deeper, past empty ambulance bays toward the maintenance alcove. My sneaker slipped on oil. I hit the deck hard. He grabbed my ankle. Reflex. I mule-kicked backward, felt something give. The mechanical room's steel door is usually latched for airflow. That morning, a toolbox kept it from closing. Small mercy. I dove inside, shoved the bar, killed the light. Boiler heat wrapped me like a blanket dipped in bleach. Outside, he pounded once, twice, then nothing. I crouched behind pipes, texting my sister even without signal. "Call police garage B3. Useless, but it felt like doing something. I don't know how long I hid. My Fitbit later said 14 minutes, heart rate averaging 148. Eventually, the corridor lights brightened, and I heard the plodding footsteps of Mr. Ruiz, the day shift engineer, whistling off-key. I banged the door. He nearly had a heart attack. Security arrived 10 minutes later, after morning prayers, because budget cuts trimmed their patrol roster too. By then, Polo Guy was gone. The only proof he existed was a busted window, the bloody tire iron. I photographed it before surrendering it, and the text that finally sent once we surfaced. Police called it attempted robbery. I can't shake the feeling it was personal. He knew my name and he knew my car. HR ignored my request for updated garage cameras. Instead, they gave me a voucher for 2 rideshare trips per month. Now I park on a street with actual lampposts and carry pepper spray big enough to put down a bear. Most nights I'm fine, until the hour between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, when the hospital hum quiets and my ears reach for phantom footsteps circling a concrete floor. If you work nights and your gut says the helpful stranger is wrong for the setting, listen. The second guessing feels silly right up until the moment the glass explodes. I'm killing the swamp cooler in the ranger station and posting this because the county's official report keeps calling what happened over 4th of July weekend a noise complaint gone wrong. Funny how a report can leave out 3 separate heatstroke collapses, 5 disappearing campers, and a chant that still finds its way into my dreams. I'm Nate, senior seasonal ranger at Mesquite Bluff State Park. Nothing grand, just 30 primitive campsites, a dusty river trail, and 1 radio repeater that never quite covers the southern loop. I've done 8 summers there. Heat waves come and go. Usually the worst damage is melted gummy bears. Last year's spike was different. 3 days straight above 108 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 cloud cover, and more visitors than AC units. My only backup was Gabe, an earnest intern still bragging about finishing his wildlife bio degree. We signed in Thursday morning, checked the thermometer, already 96 degrees Fahrenheit at 8 o'clock, and divvied up emergency ice packs. Budget cuts, notice a theme, meant we'd stay on until Monday sunrise, sleep in shifts, nightly patrols together. I figured the biggest danger would be dehydration, maybe an illegal fireworks spark. Then Site 19 rolled in. 5 of them, 3 men, 2 women. Light hiking clothes, identical steel canteens polished like surgical instruments. No sweating, no crankiness. They handed over prepaid permits and, oddly, offered Gabe and me sealed bottles of water from a brand I didn't recognize. I dumped mine discreetly. Labels looked homemade. The woman with gray braids asked a lot about our radio frequencies. Said she used to volunteer with search and rescue. That first night, 23:30, Gabe and I hiked the loops. The heat clung like wet wool. Everyone was crashed out except 19. They were awake around a lantern, humming something that made my teeth buzz. Gabe recorded a few seconds on his phone. Words sounded Slavic, maybe Church Slavonic if you believe Reddit linguists. Morning of day 2, we found Loop B littered with little paper triangles, each printed with the same symbol from their canteens. A circle within a flame within a square. One family reported drums near River Mile 3 at dawn. We shrugged. Cicadas can make weird rhythms. But the family packed up early, eyes hollow. When Gabe and I swung by Site 19, it was empty. No tents, no trash, no footprints leading out. Instead, we spotted their group squatting under the open-air group shelter by the river, sheets rigged as walls. Tall guy smiled, said, "The furnace grows, we needed more air." Nothing in the rulebook let me evict them for moving zones. By sunset, the main trail felt like a convection oven. I checked my watch, 117 degrees Fahrenheit. Radios started dropping out even on high power. Gabe, scrolling TikTok, found a live stream tagged #furnace gathering. 5 cloaked silhouettes chanting beside what looked like the park's main trailhead sign. Viewer count climbing past 9,000. Someone in comments asked, "When is the fire test?" I felt my stomach flip. Night 2, 2:10. Our only EMT on site was treating a collapsed teenager when a call came over the PA that all Rangers were requested at the amphitheater. Problem? We don't have a PA system. Gabe and I hoofed it and found nothing but abandoned glow sticks forming the furnace symbol. That's when my radio emitted a new voice, mine, looping the phrase, "Shelter is fraud. Open to the heat." Feedback spiked. Both radios died. Day 3, 4 o'clock. The concrete picnic tables felt hot to the touch. Campers kept approaching asking if the ritual fire was part of the holiday program. We sprinted to River Mile 3. In the clearing, the 5 stood around a waist-high log pyramid soaked in something that reeked like citrus and gasoline. The tall man held the projector we keep locked in the nature center. The chant blasting from its speaker wasn't recorded anymore. They were lip-syncing. I announced a county-wide fire ban. He replied, "The furnace accepts no bans." On some signal they rushed, not to fight, but to smother Gabe and me in a human pile, aiming to pin us while someone flicked a bic under the logs. Heat had me seeing white spots, but adrenaline is a stubborn thing. I rolled, pulled Gabe free, and we bolted uphill. Behind us, the chant crescendoed, then cut. Sirens wailed. The paramedics returning for another heat stroke had spotted the flames through the pines. Deputies arrived minutes later. The clearing was empty. Only the smoldering pyre remained, and 5 polished canteens arranged like a star. State Lab took the canteens for testing. A week later, the official email said they'd been misplaced in transit. The water inside had tested positive for low-dose beta blockers, a drug that keeps your heart rate calm even in extreme heat. No fingerprints, no DNA, no plate numbers on the footage we scraped from camper GoPros. The park superintendent quietly added groups of 5 with matching gear to the discretionary turnaway list. Now, every time the forecast cracks triple digits, I listen for distant drums rolling under the cicadas. If you ever camp at Mesquite Bluffs and a stranger offers you water from a bottle with a flame inside a square logo, pour it out, pack up, and leave the furnace to itself. Some experiments need volunteers. I prefer to keep my pulse racing right where it belongs. I used to think blackout curtains were the most dangerous part of any conference hotel. Trip over one, and you'll faceplant into a desk. But that was before the Fort Meadow Hospitality Expo. 11 months later, I wedge a chair under every hotel doorknob out of reflex, and I've downgraded to a 2010 ThinkPad with the webcam taped over. Anything newer feels like an invitation. I run AV for mid-sized trade shows. We bring our own fiber, banks of routers, and enough extension cords to lasso the moon. Last July, Crestline Grand hired my 4-tech crew. Me, Patricia, Len, and rookie Drew, to keep 3 ballrooms streaming around the clock. The hotel is a 30-story glass needle downtown, infamous for chewing through subcontractors with its maze-like service corridors. Still, the pay was good. Thursday's setup was smooth. Friday, 14/17, city power hiccuped. Lights flickered, audience groaned. UPS units took the load like champs. Building generators never fired. Maintenance shrugged. Brownouts happened. But 30 seconds after the dip, our hallway cams recorded a silhouette pausing at our suite door. Security insisted the floor had been clear. 2:15 Saturday, we finally crawled to bed. Our suite had 2 adjoining rooms. I locked the deadbolt, chain, and privacy latch. Maybe overkill, but gear thieves love expos. Drew's laptop sat open on the dresser, screen glowing white text on black. "Why did you leave the door unlocked?" He swore he'd shut the lid and enabled Face ID. We chalked it up to nerves. 4 o'clock. Fire alarm shrieked. Total blackout. Even the emergency strips failed. We fumbled for headlamps, found none. The corridor emergency LEDs glowed a nauseous green. Patricia thought she heard her late dad's voice echoing from the north wing. She bolted. We chased, but Len tripped, and we lost her at the 17th floor landing. where the stairwell meets a service hallway, marked authorized personnel only. When power returned 10 minutes later, Patricia was back in our suite, barefoot, holding a room service tray she didn't order. She had no memory of leaving. The tray's receipt showed an extension that didn't exist. Len decided to check roof antennas for interference. He took a walkie and the keycard master. 7 minutes later, the walkie buzzed with a single word, silence, and went dead. Hotel security located Len unconscious near the HVAC bay. Right wrist burned in a perfect ring. The sectional antenna we use for boosting Wi-Fi lay snapped in half beside him. The night manager wrote it up as trespassing. Back home, Drew pulled network logs. At 4:03, the suite router logged a directional burst of RF noise on every frequency from 600 megahertz to 5 gigahertz. Len's watch recorded a heart rate spike to 220 BPM exactly at that second. So did the fitness trackers of 200 guests, even those asleep on lower floors. A month later, I met Celeste, an ex-night manager who'd quit after the expo. She handed me a thumb drive of corridor footage. Frame by frame at 4:03, a figure in maintenance overalls, night vision goggles, and hearing protection walks past our door carrying a parabolic dish the size of a satellite. He stops, tilts his head toward the camera. Then the feed whites out. I've shown the clip to 2 sound engineers. They say a high-powered LRAD, basically an acoustic cannon, could scramble balance, induce panic, and drop a grown man to his knees. Combine that with total darkness and a voice sample spliced from recorded hallway chatter, and you've got a weaponized haunting. Officially, Crestline called the expo a successful event marred by isolated technical issues. Unofficially, a month later, 6 projectors went missing from their locked storage cage. Insurance covered it. The hotel fired Celeste for leaking footage. The dishman has never been identified. Sometimes I replay the clip until the goggles turn toward the lens. I always pause right before the feed cuts, terrified that one of these days the figure will raise a hand, wave, and the date stamp in the corner will flip to whatever night I happen to be watching. Until I know who or what scrambled a 30-story hotel like a cheap radio, I'll keep my webcams taped and my ears tuned for sudden silence. I never planned to rant online, but the Harrowfield Gazette just printed an editorial calling me Deputy Fun Police, and I need the record set straight. What happened at the Summer Heritage Fair wasn't a political protest or a teen prank. It was a full-scale social terror test run, and I was unlucky enough to hold the cash box. I'm Val, 39, single, chronically overcommitted. The fair shuts down Main Street for one glorious July weekend. Kettle corn, craft booths, terrible cover bands. I'm treasurer for the Civic Association, which means I sit in a tiny shade tent counting ticket stubs and praying the smoothie vendor takes pity on me. Our police chief, Ray Ellison, fancies himself community dad. He insists on standing beside me with his counterfeit detecting marker like we're guarding the Federal Reserve. 3 weeks before the fair, my life imploded. Messy breakup, moved into a sublet above the laundromat, minivan transmission groaning. I mention this so you'll understand why I jumped at volunteer hours. Time spent busy is time not spent doom scrolling. Fair day started normal. By noon, temp hit 96 degrees Fahrenheit. Tempers followed. A knot of high schoolers in tie-dye gathered at the gazebo chanting, "Transparency is safety." Ray, in full uniform, waded over and waved his marker like Excalibur until they dispersed. Someone live-streamed me in the background. Within an hour, Facebook labeled me Ray's sidekick blocking free speech. 14:07, generators cut. The stage went silent mid-Fleetwood Mac cover. Ceiling fans froze. Vendors cursed. Before anyone processed, a voice boomed from hidden speakers. "Citizens, your compliance is noted. Please remain calm while accountability is assessed." Perfect PA diction, but none of the rented systems were active. Ray barked into his radio. Static. Panic simmered. Someone cried that their kid was missing. The inflatable slide deflated like a dying whale. I tried 911, no signal. Main Street is usually fine, but all 5 carriers showed emergency only. Clue number 1. I spotted a stringer from the local college paper live streaming. He was talking to a man in a county utility vest, carrying a bright orange road case. The streamer panned to the crowd. Comments flooded. "Make the cop draw his marker! Turn the fare into the purge!" The road case man gave the kid a thumbs up. Ray froze, maybe sensory overload. I decided if the PA could talk to us, we could talk back. I pushed through the milling crowd to Maple Alley, where the selfie photo booth sits. Inside, I found an iPad duct taped to a PA amp, powered by an old-school car battery. A mesh router taped to the roof beamed a private Wi-Fi called Vote Here Free. Options on screen: release the cash box, play confession from Chief, collapse the bounce house. The option release the cash box had 600 votes. I yanked the battery cable. The PA died mid-sentence. Immediately, the Jumbotron at the other end of the street flashed a meme of Ray looking constipated. Overlay text reading, "Somebody stole your thunderpin, Chief?" Laughter rolled like thunder itself. Then, the county utility vest appeared, flanked by 2 teens with phone gimbals. He demanded the battery back, claiming it was public property. I recognized him. Josh Messner, fired from Public Works last winter for siphoning diesel. Folks think of him as a harmless crank. Today, he wasn't harmless. He reached for my wrist. I pivoted like in the cardio kick class my ex hated, and buried my elbow in his sternum. He went down, gasping. 1 teen kept filming. The other tried to yank the cash box from under the table. My ex, Kev, happened to be on fire rescue duty, saw the scuffle, and barreled in. Clipboard cops love paperwork. Firefighters love action. Kev cuffed Messner with zip ties and loaded the hacked PA gear onto the gurney as potentially hazardous electronics. The teens scattered. Ray finally snapped out of whatever trance he was in, called for uniform backup, and tried to arrest me for abandoning the cash. Kev threatened to livestream that, and Ray backed off. Tallying afterwards, vendors were missing roughly $7,000, mostly from tills closest to the hacked speakers. Messner's phone showed scripts coaching the crowd to decide outcomes in real time. Basically an experiment in crowdsourced mayhem. The Gazette headline the next morning blamed antisocial agitators and ran a still of me, elbowing Messner captioned, "Community volunteer assaults protester." Since then, memes of cop banker Val circulate whenever my name hits Facebook. I'm apartment hunting 2 counties over. For the record, the only thing I assaulted was a man trying to weaponize groupthink. If you hear a disembodied voice telling you the crowd decides your fate, remember, it takes 1 pulled battery cable to shut down a whole narrative. Just be ready for the headlines to leave that part out. I've rewritten this post 3 times because it keeps sounding like a low-budget thriller. But every second is true. I was a CPA for 12 years until a sloppy merger and a worse divorce nuked my savings. These days I work graveyard at a Sunstop convenience store off the interstate, saving for paralegal school. It's mostly lottery tickets and burnt coffee. Safe, boring, anonymous. Last Thursday ruined the safe part. My shift starts at 22 o'clock. The district just installed a silent panic pedal that roots through the dusty landline because cell coverage out here is a rumor. Luis, the day manager, briefs me, then leaves at 23 o'clock sharp to catch his Greyhound. I spend the hours reading barcodes and mentally balancing imaginary ledgers. 2:17, the front door chime dinged. A boy walked in alone, maybe 7, wearing Spider-Man pajamas, 1 size too small. His eyes were unfocused, like he'd just woken up. He marched straight to the refrigerated display and pressed his forehead to the glass. No adults, no cars outside, just the rust-colored van idling at Pump 3. Our county's under a midnight to 4 o'clock curfew for minors because of recent runaways. I leaned over the counter, called, "Hey buddy, where are your parents?" He didn't answer. Door chime again. A man in a courier cap, mid-40s, weirdly formal posture, stepped inside. He smiled big enough to flash premolars. "All good," he said. "I'm transporting the boy for a medical sleep trial. Quick pit stop." He flashed a laminated badge that looked printed on an inkjet, complete with an expired QR code. I radioed the stockroom for Luis out of habit, forgetting he was long gone, and heard only static. The cell signal symbol on the register modem was red X'd. The man saw me glance at it. His smile flattened. "No need for alarm," he said, placing a gloved hand on the boy's shoulder. The boy flinched, but stayed silent. I triggered the pedal under the mat with my heel. Policy says response can take 9 to 12 minutes, so the goal is stall. I offered a complimentary slushie. Kids love sugar. The man refused. We're on a tight schedule. A woman in a clipboard and scrubs stepped out of the van and stood blocking the automatic doors from closing. Curfew violation plus 2 strange adults equals code very bad. I told the kid, "Want to help me pick a candy bar? They're right over here." As soon as the man loosened his grip, the boy scuttled down aisle 3. I followed. At the end cap, I grabbed a can of grape soda and gave it the tiniest shake. Pop. The foam geysered onto the man's khakis. Reflex had him let go of the boy entirely. The clipboard woman shouted, lunging forward, but the automatic door senses stop if something's in the way. She got clipped. I herded the boy behind the lottery display and whispered, "Hide. Police are coming." He curled into a ball. The man advanced, reaching into his messenger bag. I pictured pepper spray, taser, or something worse. Plan B, create noise. I ran behind the counter and grabbed the big Thundersnap box we sell around New Year's. Ripped it open, tossed a handful onto the linoleum. The pops echoed like gunfire. The man ducked. The woman froze. Across the parking lot, I heard sirens. The county sheriff responding to the landline alarm. The van's engine sputtered and died as curfew enforcement software kicked in. Vehicles that idle more than 2 hours trigger a remote kill by the station's fuel controller. He hadn't known. The sheriff's cruiser skidded to a stop. Deputy Lopez entered with hand on taser. The man tried to lawyer, badge waving. Lopez scanned the QR code, shrugged, and cuffed him. Clipboard woman surrendered. The boy finally spoke. "I just wanted my mom." Turns out he'd been missing from a transitional shelter 2 towns over for 36 hours. Later, we learned the pair had hit 3 states, snatching kids from shelters with promises of research stipends, then selling their medical data to a biotech startup. Corporate sent me a commendation email and a $50 gift card. Generous, right? I bought a prepaid phone from another carrier and tucked a camping hatchet under the counter. It took 8 more hours before my hands stopped shaking, and I still glance at pump 3 every time an engine idles too long. If a lone kid wanders in after midnight and a stranger says sleep study, remember the panic pedal works, but only if you trust your instincts long enough to stall the monsters. I'm writing this from a roadside diner 200 miles off Route 47 while chugging drip coffee that tastes like melted pennies. My mentor Cliff is outside pacing, probably telling headquarters that I quit. 3 weeks ago, I was just another laid-off GIS grad signing on as a survey assistant. Now I'm pretty sure some contractor used me as living telemetry. The job pitch was straightforward. Drive, deploy sensors along a planned smart highway corridor, record signal strength, report anomalies. 2-person teams for safety. Cliff had the experience. I had the laptop and fresh student debt. We signed non-disclosures thicker than a phone book. Day 1, we left the field office at dawn. Route 47 is heat-rippled asphalt carving through soybean fields, officially closed to civilian traffic for construction, but still open to us. Temperature hit 103 degrees Fahrenheit by noon. Cliff insisted on splitting up to speed coverage, handing me his personal walkie because the company units weren't too easy to track. That should have been clue number one. Less than an hour later, the walkie crackled with a synthetic version of my own voice. Meet at the truck. I jogged back. Truck was empty, engine running, tailgate down. My phone displayed a temperature warning. Battery overheat, shutting down. I heard a new voice on the walkie, low and calm, saying, "Signal acquired. Continue moving." That phrase would repeat every time I stopped longer than 60 seconds, like a shepherd dog nipping heels. Cliff appeared 10 minutes later, shirt drenched. He claimed he blacked out from the heat and had no idea who used the walkie. We kept working. That night at the motel, he quizzed me about my emergency contacts and whether anyone would notice if we missed check-ins. I laughed it off. Wrong move. Day 2. Detours forced us onto narrow service roads flanked by corn taller than the truck. Cliff sent me ahead to check a suspect node. Halfway there, my phone buzzed, though it had no bars. A push notification from an app I'd never installed, Paraguide, showing my coordinates and a red countdown reading 96, 0 o'clock. The walkie whispered, "Signal stable." Every hair on my arms rose. I hiked back. Cliff was kneeling by a node cabinet, pretending to swap a SIM. His personal laptop was open, logging latitude, heart rate, ambient noise, my data, according to the labels. When he noticed me reading the screen, he snapped it shut and forced a smile. "Gotta keep metadata clean," he said. I decided right then to bail at first safe chance. That safe chance arrived by miracle. 2 teens in orange safety vests sprinting across the road, yanking fiber cables. They'd been stripping copper to sell. Chaos broke Cliff's focus. I waved them down, told them law enforcement was on the way. Lie. Offered cash for directions to the nearest gas station. They bolted, but not before knocking Cliff's laptop into the ditch. When he lunged to retrieve it, I hopped in the truck and locked the doors. The walkie shrieked my own voice, begging for help, distorted like a drowning call. I reversed onto the service road, heading for the diner, whose neon sign I'd glimpsed through corn earlier. Inside the diner, I borrowed the landline and called the state patrol, babbling about unauthorized data harvesting. Troopers arrived, found Cliff's truck abandoned. He'd taken off cross countries with just the walkie and a small hard case. In the back, they discovered a second laptop with a live connection streaming biometrics to a server registered to a think tank, specializing in human-machine decision loops. Corporate claimed Cliff went rogue. They offered me hush money to sign a release. I asked about Paraguide, blank stares. I factory reset my phone, but the Ghost app kept reinstalling until I bought a flip phone. The countdown had reached 92, 13:44 before it vanished. Tomorrow, I'll hand the troopers the SD card I yanked from Cliff's drone. Did I mention he had a drone? And then I'm driving west until the map finally stops lighting up red around me. If a walkie in your breast pocket ever starts using your own voice to herd you down a dead highway, keep moving. Somebody's mapping human reactions, and you're the next data point. I'm posting during my lunch break because last night, the National Maritime Museum became a stage set for someone else's performance, and I'm still not sure if I was supposed to play the hero or the understudy. I limp. Old basketball injury, so security stuck me on camera duty years ago. Less walking, more watching. Turns out mirrors work both ways. Quick background. The museum is 3 floors of figureheads, sextants, and decommissioned torpedoes tucked beside the river. Night shifts are usually me, Gladys in archives, and Marcos doing janitorial. 2 weeks ago, the city rolled scheduled maintenance on the power grid. Midnight to 4 o'clock, backup generators promised. We rehearsed the checklist. Easy. 1:12, the mains died. Generators coughed to 30%. Corridor lights flickered like Morse code. Our motion detector feed lit up, silhouettes in the sealed east wing, which has been closed for renovation since February. Only 3 master keys exist. Mine was in my pocket. I radioed Gladys. Static. Marcos reported seeing me on level 2, limping, carrying a tool cart. I was in the control room, level 1. He followed and texted a photo. A man with my build, my uniform, even the same gait. My stomach froze. The East Wing access logs showed my badge used at 058. Impossible, because I'd been scanning invoices in the control room. Timestamped. I replayed external cams. At 045, a delivery van bearing our usual ARC Transport logo buzzed in. Manifest said cleaning solvents. We had no scheduled delivery. I grabbed backup flashlight and headed for the service elevator, only to find it already on its way down. Door opened, empty, except for a mannequin torso dressed in my spare uniform. Name tag clipped on, limbs missing. Tape recorder in chest repeated my voice. Routine maintenance, East Wing sealed. The elevator lights died. I forced the doors and climbed the ladder to level 2. In the pitch-dark gallery, I heard scraping, metal on metal. My flashlight beam landed on a rolling crate holding the 1840 figurehead of the clipper ship Ardent Grace. Value, 7 figures. A man in a Gladys uniform pushed it. He wore a blank plastic face mask, eye holes wide. He whispered, perfectly mimicking Gladys's smoker rasp. Only evidence removed. I shouted code red and advanced. The imposter spun, knocking over a case of brass sextants. Alarms deaf with no speaker power. He dashed through staff-only exit toward the loading bay. Crate gliding on padded casters. Outside, orange strobes from a hired generator truck lit the dock like a war zone. I gave chase, but my knee buckled on the threshold. Pain flared white. By the time I hauled myself up, loading bay doors were rising. A second masked figure dressed in Marcos's janitorial greens typed a code into the door control panel. Backwards, using a mirror to avoid leaving fingerprints. The door slammed shut between us. Generators finally rebooted building power at 129. Actual Gladys emerged from archives, bleeding from a superficial scalp wound. She'd been hit from behind walking to the break room. Marcos was found locked in a supply closet, wrists zip-tied. Neither saw their double's face. Inventory showed nothing missing but one old server tower, storing 10 years of visitor logs and floor plan updates, obsolete, due for recycling. Insurance shrugged. Data isn't their jurisdiction. IT says the server held detailed 3D scans used for virtual tours, plus our badge entry history. Basically a blueprint for future thefts. Police took statements, dusted for prints, none. The delivery manifest was forged using last year's template. The van plates belonged to a bread company that closed in 2018. Detective asked if I had enemies. I said only overdue library fines. Today, I noticed a tiny change. The limp that imposter used was my old gait. Before surgery last December corrected it. Whoever studied me used footage at least 7 months old. They edited the present version of me out and copied the past. That means someone's been archiving more than floor plans. We've installed body cams and 2-factor badge auth, but deep down I think the figurehead was never the prize. Stealing identities, rehearsing exits, measuring response times, that's the real haul. If you tour the museum and hear me announce an unscheduled closure, double-check you're listening to the current me, not a recording of last year. Someone out there already knows the way out better than I do, and the next time the doors open, the thing rolling away may not be wood and paint. It might be my life in plastic. I've been debating whether to share this for months now. My therapist says writing it down might help with the nightmares, so here goes. This happened last March, when I was working security at Westfield Shopping Center. I'd been there about 6 months, mostly doing overnight shifts while studying for my EMT certification during the day. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 a.m. The mall was closed, obviously, and I was doing my usual rounds. The place is massive. 3 floors, 2 parking structures, and about 200 stores. Usually the creepiest part was just the mannequins in the store windows, but that night was different. I first noticed something was off when I reached the food court. One of the service doors was propped open. Not unusual. Sometimes the cleaning crew forgets to close them properly. But when I went to shut it, I heard footsteps echoing from the service corridor behind the restaurants. Heavy ones, like work boots. I called out, thinking it was Jorge from maintenance. No answer. The footsteps stopped immediately. Now, I should mention that these service corridors run behind all the stores. They're narrow, poorly lit, and connect to loading docks, electrical rooms, and emergency exits. Mall employees use them to move around without going through the public areas. I'd only been in them a handful of times. I radioed the other guard, Marcus, who was checking the north parking structure. He said Jorge had left at midnight, and the cleaning crew wasn't scheduled until 4 a.m. Protocol said to wait for backup before investigating, but the footsteps had started again, moving away from me. Fast. I made the stupid decision to follow. The corridor was darker than usual. Several bulbs were out. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but concrete walls and utility pipes. The footsteps stayed ahead of me, always just around the next corner. After about 5 minutes of this cat-and-mouse game, I realized something that made my skin crawl. The footsteps weren't just staying ahead of me. They were leading me somewhere. Every turn I made took me deeper into parts of the mall I'd never patrolled. Then I saw him. Or at least, I saw his back. A man in a maintenance uniform, about 50 feet ahead, just turning another corner. But something was wrong with how he moved. Too fluid. Too deliberate. Like he was floating rather than walking. I picked up my pace, practically jogging now. My radio crackled, Marcus asking for my location. I tried to respond, but got only static. The fluorescent lights above started flickering, casting weird shadows that seemed to move independently. The corridor opened into a mechanical room I didn't recognize. Massive HVAC units hummed loudly, and the temperature dropped at least 20 degrees. The man in the maintenance uniform stood at the far end, facing away from me. "Sir, this is mall security. I need you to turn around and identify yourself." He turned, and I wish to God he hadn't. It was Horta's uniform, but the face, it wasn't quite right. Like someone had tried to draw Jorge from memory and got the proportions wrong. The eyes were too far apart, the mouth too wide. And when he smiled, there were too many teeth. "You're right on time," he said, in a voice that sounded like multiple people speaking in unison. That's when I noticed the others. They stepped out from behind the HVAC units. At least a dozen people in various mall employee uniforms. All with those same wrong faces. All smiling with too many teeth. I ran. Sprinted back the way I came, their footsteps thundering behind me. But the corridors had changed. Turns that should have been there weren't. New passages had appeared. I was completely lost. My salvation came in the form of a fire alarm pull station. I yanked it without hesitation. The piercing wail filled the corridors, and emergency lights bathed everything in red. More importantly, it would automatically notify the fire department and police. The footsteps behind me stopped. When I glanced back, the corridor was empty. I kept running until I found an emergency exit that led to the loading dock. I burst outside into the cool night air and didn't stop until I reached my car. The fire department arrived within minutes, followed by the police. They searched the entire mall, including the service corridors. They found nothing. No intruders, no sign of forced entry, nothing on the security cameras. The only evidence was the open service door I'd initially discovered. Marcus said he never heard my radio calls. The system showed I'd never tried to contact him. According to the patrol log, I'd been off camera for exactly 18 minutes. I quit the next day, moved back in with my parents in Ohio. Still working on that EMT certification, but I only apply to day shifts now. Sometimes I Google them all, looking for news about disappearances or strange incidents. So far, nothing. But last week, I got a Facebook message from Marcus. He said the new guard on my old shift had gone missing during patrol. They found him 3 hours later in a service corridor, completely catatonic. He won't say what he saw, but Marcus said the guy keeps drawing faces. Hundreds of them, all slightly wrong. I'm sharing this because I need to know if anyone else has experienced something similar. Have any other security guards encountered these things? What are they? What do they want? I still have nightmares about those smiles. Those goddamn smiles with too many teeth. I work as a night auditor at a hotel in downtown Minneapolis. Been doing it for 3 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything. Drunk guests, attempted break-ins, the occasional domestic dispute. But what happened during last month's blizzard still has me considering a career change. It was a Sunday night in early February. The Weather Service had been warning about this storm for days. Supposed to dump 2 feet of snow with winds up to 60 miles per hour. Most sensible people had hunkered down by afternoon, but hotels don't close for weather. By 11 p.m., I was alone at the front desk. My manager had left early to beat the storm, and housekeeping had finished their rounds. The hotel was maybe 30% occupied, mostly stranded travelers and a few long-term guests. The snow was coming down so hard you couldn't see across the street. Around midnight, a man stumbled through the front doors. No luggage, no winter coat. Just a wrinkled business suit covered in snow. His lips were blue, and he was shaking violently. I rushed around the desk to help him. "Sir, are you okay? What happened?" He grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Don't let him in," he whispered through chattering teeth. "Whatever you do, don't let him in." I got him to a chair and wrapped him in blankets from our supply closet. Called 911, but dispatch said emergency services were suspended until the storm passed, unless it was life-threatening. The man refused to let me call anyway, becoming agitated when I reached for the phone. His name was David Chen, according to his driver's license. From Chicago, no luggage, no car keys, just a wallet and a phone with a dead battery. He'd warmed up enough to speak clearly, but wouldn't explain how he'd ended up in downtown Minneapolis in a blizzard with no coat. "Can I have a room?" he asked. "I'll pay cash, please. I just need somewhere safe until morning." I checked him in, putting him on the 3rd floor. As I handed him the key card, he gripped my wrist again. "Lock the doors, all of them. Don't let anyone in tonight, no matter what they say." After he went upstairs, I did a walkthrough of the hotel. All entrances were secure. Parking garage locked down. The storm was getting worse. Power flickering occasionally. Wind howling like something alive. Around 2 a.m., someone buzzed the front door. Through the glass, I could see a figure in a heavy parka, hood up, face obscured. They were carrying what looked like a briefcase. "Hello?" I called through the intercom. "We're not accepting walk-ins due to the storm." "I'm looking for David Chen." The voice was calm, pleasant even. "He's expecting me. Room 312, I believe." I hadn't told anyone David's room number. Hell, I'd barely processed his registration. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't confirm guest information. If you'd like to call Mr. Chen directly." "Just let me in. It's freezing out here." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. Too casual, like the weather wasn't affecting him at all. I looked closer at the figure. Snow wasn't accumulating on his parka. In a blizzard like this, he should have been covered in white within seconds of standing still. "I'm sorry, but I can't admit anyone without proper..." The lights went out. Complete darkness for about 3 seconds before the emergency power kicked in. When I looked back at the door, the figure was gone. No footprints in the snow. Nothing. I grabbed my flashlight and did another round, checking every entrance. All secure. But when I returned to the desk, my computer showed someone had accessed the guest registry. David Chin's information was pulled up on the screen. The phone rang. Internal call from room 312. Is he here? David's voice was pure panic. Someone was at the door asking for you. I didn't let them in. Check your cameras, please. Check the cameras right now. I pulled up the security feeds on my second monitor. The front entrance camera showed nothing. No figure in a parka, no footprints, no indication anyone had been there at all. I rewound the footage. At 2 a.m. there was just empty snowfall. There's nothing on the cameras, I told him. He can do that. Listen to me very carefully. I used to work for some very bad people. I took something when I left. Evidence. He's here to get it back and make sure I can't testify. Don't trust anyone who comes to that door tonight. Over the next hour, the buzzer rang 6 more times. Each time, a different person. A woman claiming her car broke down. A police officer saying they were checking on stranded motorists. A pizza delivery guy who insisted someone had ordered food. None of them showed up on the cameras. The worst was when my manager appeared at the door around 4 a.m. Looked exactly like him, down to the Dallas Cowboys jacket he always wore. "Hey, forgot my laptop," he said through the intercom. "Can you let me in real quick?" I almost did. My hand was on the button when I noticed his breath wasn't fogging in the cold. In sub-zero temperatures, that's impossible. "Sure thing, Jerry," I said, playing along. "What's the code for the office?" He paused. "Come on, man. Just let me in. It's freezing." Jerry had been telling me that code every day for 3 years, reminding me constantly because I kept forgetting. This thing didn't know it. By 6 a.m., the storm had passed, and the buzzer had been quiet for an hour. David came down to the lobby carrying his briefcase, not the same one the figure outside had held. "Thank you," he said simply. "The FBI will be here soon. I'm sorry you got caught up in this." He was right. 3 black SUVs pulled up within the hour. Agents took David away, along with all our security footage from the night. They made me sign something, a very official-looking document about national security and not discussing the events. But here's what haunts me. They found footprints in the snow. Dozens of them, circling the building all night. The snow had preserved them perfectly, but our cameras, even the ones I'd personally checked for functionality, showed nothing but empty winter night. I still work the night audit, still at the same hotel. Jerry doesn't mention that night, and neither do I. But now, whenever someone buzzes the door during my shift, I check for breath fog. It's such a simple thing. Warm air meeting cold. Purely biological. Apparently some things can mimic human appearance perfectly, but can't fake being alive. The FBI never told me what David had taken or who was after him. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I wonder if that thing is still out there, wearing someone else's face, looking for another way in. I need to tell someone about this before I lose my nerve completely. 2 weeks ago, I discovered something at my job that's made me question everything. I'm a janitor at Riverside Elementary. Been cleaning there for 8 years on the night shift. It's usually peaceful work. Just me, my music, and empty hallways. But not anymore. It started when they began renovating the old wing. That part of the building hadn't been used since the 90s. Asbestos concerns, they said. The construction crew worked days, but I had to clean up after them at night. Dust everywhere, plastic sheeting, the usual renovation mess. On a Thursday night, I was sweeping the third-floor hallway when I noticed one of the classroom doors was open. Room 308. The construction guys must have forgotten to lock it. I went in to check if they'd left any tools behind. The room was wrong. I can't explain it better than that. It was too big, for one thing. The dimensions didn't match what should have been possible given the building's layout. And it was cold. Not normal cold, but the kind that seeps into your bones. But what really got me were the desks. 25 of them, arranged in perfect rows, each with a name placard. Modern names on old-style cards. Emma Martinez, Jaden Thompson, Aaliyah Patel. I recognized some of them. These were current students, kids I'd seen in the halls during afternoon shifts. On the teacher's desk was a leather-bound attendance book. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened it. The dates went back decades, but the names were all current students. Emma Martinez, present every day since 1987. Jaden Thompson, perfect attendance since 1993. That's when I heard it. Children singing. Faint, like it was coming from far away. A song I remembered from my own elementary school days. The ants go marching one by one. Hurrah, hurrah. I dropped the book and ran, slammed the door behind me, and didn't stop until I reached my supply closet. I sat there for an hour, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Stress from my divorce, maybe. Too many late nights. But I had to go back. Had to finish my shift. When I returned to the third floor, room 308 was locked. Through the small window in the door, I could see it was just a normal classroom. Smaller, filled with construction equipment, clearly unused for years. I might have written it off as a weird dream, except for what happened next. Over the following nights, I started noticing things. Wet footprints in hallways I'd just mopped, child-sized. Crayon drawings appearing on bulletin boards. Disturbing ones showing kids with too many eyes or mouths where their stomachs should be. And always, always, that distant singing. Then I found the records. I was cleaning the principal's office when I knocked over a box of old files. Scattered across the floor were newspaper clippings from the 80s and 90s. Headlines about missing children. All students from Riverside Elementary. All disappeared without a trace. The articles mentioned a teacher, Miss Blackwood, who'd worked in the old wing. She'd been fired in 1996 after parents complained about her unusual teaching methods. She died a year later, but rumors persisted about occult items found in her classroom. Room 308. I started paying attention to the current students during my afternoon shifts. Some of them had a distant look, like they were listening to something only they could hear. They'd whisper to each other and fall silent when adults approached. And I swear, some of them looked at me like they knew I'd been in that room. Last Tuesday, I was cleaning the second-floor bathroom when I heard my name. A child's voice, coming from the stall at the end. "Mr. Ray, we've been waiting for you." I looked under the stall door. Small feet in Velcro sneakers, perfectly still. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. "Miss Blackwood wants to meet you. She says you're ready to understand." The feet disappeared. Not walked away. Disappeared. Like they were never there. But on the toilet seat was a folded piece of paper. A child's drawing of a classroom. In the corner, barely visible, was a figure that might have been me, holding a mop. And surrounding me were children. So many children. All with black holes where their eyes should be. I called in sick the next 3 nights. Spent them researching, trying to find more about Miss Blackwood and the missing kids. What I found made everything worse. The children didn't just disappear. They were seen afterward. Different cities, different times, but always the same age as when they vanished. Parents would spot them in crowds, on playgrounds, through windows. But when approached, they'd vanish. One mother swore she saw her daughter, missing for 10 years, playing in their old backyard. The girl looked exactly the same, wearing the same clothes she'd disappeared in. And there were the dreams. Parents reported identical nightmares about a classroom that was too big, too cold, about their children sitting in rows, learning things that humans weren't meant to know, about a teacher whose face they could never quite see, teaching lessons in languages that predated words. I went back to work last night. Had to. Bills don't pay themselves, and who'd believe me anyway? But when I reached the 3rd floor, every single door in the old wing was open. Every classroom filled with that impossible cold. And from somewhere deep in the building, I could hear them. All of them. Singing. I found a note in my supply closet, written in crayon. "Class starts soon, Mr. Ray. Don't be late." I'm writing this from my car in the school parking lot. It's 3 a.m. My shift isn't over, but I can't go back in, because I finally understand what Miss Blackwood is doing. She's not taking the children. She's collecting them, preserving them, teaching them. And now she knows I know. The singing hasn't stopped. Even out here, windows rolled up, radio blaring, I can still hear it, getting closer. And I swear, I can see small shapes moving between the cars, waiting. I don't know what to do. If I quit, they'll hire someone else, someone who won't notice the signs until it's too late. But if I stay, God help me. I think I can hear my own name in their song now. Update. I'm posting this from my phone. I tried to drive away, but my car won't start. The children are surrounding it now, not threatening, just watching, waiting. And behind them, in the school entrance, I can see her. Miss Blackwood. She's exactly as the parents described. A shadow where a person should be. Features that shift when you try to focus on them. She's holding an attendance book, and she's smiling. I think I'm about to find out what happens in room 308. If anyone reads this, don't let your kids go to Riverside Elementary. And whatever you do, don't work the night shift. The doors are opening. They're so small, but their hands are so cold. So many little hands reaching. This happened 6 months ago, but I'm only now able to write about it. My lawyer says it's okay to share since the case is closed, though the Portland PD still calls occasionally with follow-up questions. I was working my usual graveyard shift at a 24-hour gym downtown. Not the glamorous job I'd pictured when I moved to Oregon, but it paid the bills while I finished my nursing degree. Gym Max was one of those budget chains, basic equipment, minimal staff, keycard access. After midnight, it was just me and whoever decided to get their workout in at 3 a.m. Usually that meant a handful of regulars. Hospital workers coming off shift, insomniacs, a few fitness obsessives who liked the empty gym. That night, a humid Thursday in August, started normally. I'd checked in a few members, wiped down equipment, restocked towels. Around 1 a.m., things got quiet. Just 3 people in the whole facility. 2 regulars on the treadmills and a woman I didn't recognize doing weights. She'd signed in as Sarah Chen, showed a valid membership card from another location. Nothing unusual there. We were part of a chain. Members could use any location. But something about her felt off. Maybe it was how she never took off her baseball cap and sunglasses, even under the harsh fluorescent lights. Or how she kept positioning herself where she could watch the entrance. By 2 a.m., the regulars had left. Just me and Sarah. She'd been there over an hour, but hadn't broken a sweat. Kept doing the same exercises with light weights, like she was killing time. I tried to focus on my anatomy textbook, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Then the door chimed. A man entered, tall, athletic build. wearing expensive workout gear. He nodded at me, swiped his card, headed straight for the free weights. Normal enough, except Sarah immediately stopped her routine. She moved to a machine that gave her a clear view of him, pretending to adjust the settings. I recognized the tension in her body. Fight or flight mode. In my neighborhood growing up, you learned to spot when someone was scared. Really scared. The kind that comes from experience, not paranoia. The man, his card said Derek Walsh, wasn't even pretending to work out. He stood by the dumbbells, watching Sarah in the mirrors. Not the usual gym creeper vibe. This was focused, purposeful, like a cat watching a mouse. I reached for my phone, then hesitated. Call the cops and say what? Two people were looking at each other. But my gut said something was very wrong. I compromised by pulling up 911 on my phone, thumb hovering over the call button. Sarah suddenly stood, leaving her water bottle and towel behind. She walked quickly toward the women's locker room. Derek followed, not even trying to be subtle about it. I stood up, my textbook falling to the floor. Sir, the men's room is the other direction. He turned to me, and I'll never forget his smile. Calm, friendly, reasonable. The smile of someone who's practiced it in a mirror. Just need to talk to my girlfriend. We had a fight. I'm sorry, but I can't let you into the women's locker room. If you'd like to wait. This doesn't concern you. The smile never wavered, but his voice dropped an octave. Sit down. Keep reading your little book. Forget you saw anything. That's when Sarah screamed. Not a startled yelp. A full-throated terror scream that echoed off the tiles. Derek's calm mask slipped for just a second, replaced by something cold and angry. He shoved past me, sending me stumbling into the front desk. I hit the call button and followed him, yelling into the phone for police. The locker room was a maze of corners and blind spots. I found them by the emergency exit. Derek had cornered Sarah, who was trying to key in the door code with shaking hands. Please, she was saying. I didn't tell anyone. I kept my mouth shut, just like you wanted. 3 years, Sarah. 3 years you've been running. Did you really think I'd stop looking? I did the stupidest, bravest thing of my life. I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall and yanked the pin. Police are on the way! Back off now! Derek turned, that practiced smile returning. You have no idea what you're interfering with. I don't care. Step away from her. He took a step toward me. I sprayed him full in the face with the extinguisher. Chemical powder filled the air as he stumbled back, coughing and cursing. Sarah finally got the door open and bolted into the night. Derek tried to follow, but I kept spraying until the canister was empty. By the time he could see again, sirens were approaching. The smile was gone now, replaced by something that made my skin crawl. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, he said quietly. Then he walked past me, calm as could be, and out the front door. The police arrived 2 minutes later. I gave them Derek's information from our system, showed them the security footage. Turns out Derek Walsh was an alias. The real Derek Walsh had reported his wallet stolen a week earlier. Sarah had vanished, but she'd left her gym bag. Inside, along with workout clothes, was a folder full of documents. Police records, hospital reports, photographs of injuries. Sarah Chen wasn't her real name either. She was hiding from an ex-boyfriend who'd nearly killed her 3 years ago. He'd violated protective orders in multiple states, always finding her no matter where she ran. They never caught him that night. But 2 weeks later, Sarah reached out through my work. We met at a police station where she thanked me for buying her enough time to escape. She was leaving Oregon, starting over again somewhere new. She looked exhausted, older than her 30 years. He'll find me again, she said matter-of-factly. He always does. But you gave me a head start. That's more than most people would do. Before she left, she gave me an envelope. Inside was a photo of Derek. Not the gym photo from our security system, but a professional headshot. He was wearing a suit, smiling that same practiced smile. On the back, she'd written, "Marcus Fitzgerald, investment banker. Everyone thinks he's perfect." I kept working at the gym for another month before the nightmares got too bad. Every time the door chimed after midnight, my heart would race. Every tall man in expensive workout gear made me reach for my phone. When I finally quit, my manager understood. The security footage had made the rounds. Everyone knew what had happened. I'm almost done with nursing school now. Work days at a clinic, no more night shifts. But I still think about Sarah sometimes. Wonder if she's safe, if she's still running. I check the news for stories about Marcus Fitzgerald, but there's nothing. Men like him don't make the news unless they want to. Last month, I got a postcard. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in the Midwest. Just 2 words in careful handwriting. Still running. I hope she keeps running. I hope he never finds her. And I hope that somewhere out there, she finds a place where she can finally stop looking over her shoulder, where she can use her real name again, where the sound of a door chime doesn't make her heart stop. But I know better. Some monsters wear human faces and designer gym clothes. They smile at the right times and say the right things, and they never, ever stop hunting. I've worked at Chicago O'Hare for 15 years, but nothing prepared me for what happened during the storm system that grounded flights last November. I need to document this while the details are still fresh, though honestly, I doubt I'll ever forget. I'm part of the overnight baggage crew. We handle lost luggage, misrouted bags, the stuff that comes in on late flights when most of the airport is shut down. It's not glamorous, but the pay is decent, and I like the quiet hours. Usually. That night, we were already short-staffed. Half the crew had called out sick, some bug going around. Just me, Clarence, and 2 newer guys, Mike and Dimitri, to handle the backlog from 3 days of weather delays. The terminal was eerily empty, except for a few stranded passengers sleeping on benches. Around 2 a.m., we got a call about bags from Flight 447 that needed sorting. Problem was, there was no Flight 447 on our system. Not delayed, not canceled. It simply didn't exist, but the bags were there, piled on Carousel 6 like any other arrival. Clarence, who'd been there even longer than me, went pale when he saw them. "That's not possible," he kept muttering. But there they were, 23 pieces of luggage, all with tags for Flight 447 from somewhere called New Arcanum. The bags themselves were wrong. Modern looking, but not quite right. Like someone had tried to recreate contemporary luggage from a description. The materials felt off, too smooth, too cold, and they were heavy. Every single one felt like it was packed with bricks. We were supposed to log them and move them to lost property, but Mike noticed something first. "These tags," he said, holding one up to the light. "Look at the dates." The departure dates were all different. Some from last week, some from last year. One was dated 1987. Another showed a date from 2029. But all of them, somehow, had arrived on the same non-existent flight. That's when we heard it. A sound like whispering, coming from inside the bags. All of them at once. Soft enough that you could almost convince yourself it was the ventilation system, but rhythmic, like chanting. Dimitri, always too curious for his own good, started to unzip one of the larger suitcases. Clarence grabbed his hand. "Don't," he said. "Some things, just don't." But it was already open a few inches. Cold air rushed out. Not normal cold, but the kind that burns your lungs. And the smell, like ozone and copper and something organic that had been preserved too long. Through the gap, we could see clothes, but they were moving, writhing, like they were being worn by invisible bodies that were trying to get out. Mike stumbled backward, knocking over another bag. It split open on impact. What spilled out still shows up in my nightmares. Clothes, yes, but arranged as if there was a person inside them. A complete outfit, suit, shoes, tie, holding the shape of a body that wasn't there. And it was moving, trying to stand up, the empty sleeves reaching toward us. More bags were starting to move on their own, rocking back and forth on the carousel. The whispers were getting louder, and now we could almost make out words. Different languages, all speaking at once, all saying what sounded like the same phrase. Time to board, time to board, time to board. We ran, left everything and ran for the employee exit. But the door wouldn't open. Our key cards, which had worked fine an hour earlier, just gave us error messages. Behind us, we could hear zippers opening, fabric rustling, those empty clothes starting to move. Clarence remembered the old manual exit by the international gates. We sprinted through the empty terminal, our footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind us, other footsteps joined in. Too many to count. Some walking, some running, some dragging as if the invisible occupants were injured. The security cameras were turning to follow us. Every screen we passed showed the same thing. Our pursuers were invisible to the cameras, just clothes moving in formation, like a parade of the hollow. We made it to the manual exit, but it was chained shut. Mike had bolt cutters in his work belt, thank God for safety violations. As he worked on the chains, the footsteps got closer. I turned to look and immediately wished I hadn't. The terminal was full of them. Hundreds of empty outfits in every style and era. Business suits, military uniforms, children's clothes, hospital gowns. All walking with purpose, all heading for us, and at the front was a pilot's uniform, complete with cap floating where a head should be. It raised one sleeve and pointed directly at us. The chains finally gave way. We burst through the door into the freezing November night. The alarm started blaring, but we didn't stop running until we reached the parking garage. When we finally looked back, the terminal windows were dark. Nothing moved inside. Security found us 20 minutes later, half frozen and babbling about invisible passengers. They reviewed the footage, of course. It showed us running through empty hallways, fleeing from nothing. The bags on Carousel 6. The cameras showed an empty belt. No evidence of Flight 447, or the horror that came with it. We were suspended pending psychological evaluation. Mike and Dimitri quit outright. Clarence took early retirement. I went back after a month, but only to day shifts. They transferred me to ticketing, far from the baggage area. But here's what haunts me. I still see them sometimes, in my peripheral vision at the airport. Empty clothes standing in security lines, vacant uniforms sitting in departure lounges, hollow outfits boarding planes. Other employees see them too. I can tell by the way they suddenly go pale and find somewhere else to be. Last week, I overheard 2 TSA agents talking in hushed tones about the phantom passengers. Apparently, it's been happening for decades. Clothes arriving on flights that don't exist, searching for something or someone. They clean them up quietly, log them as processing errors, and everyone pretends it doesn't happen. But Clarence told me something before he left. Back in the 70s, there really was a Flight 447, New Arcanum Airlines, a charter company that operated for just 6 months. Their last flight disappeared somewhere over Lake Michigan. No wreckage, no bodies. Just gone. The airline folded immediately after. All records were sealed. But every few years, bags from Flight 447 show up at airports around the world. always at night, always full of clothes that remember being worn. I'm putting in for early retirement next month. 30 years is enough. Let someone else deal with the phantom passengers. Let someone else pretend not to see the empty clothes waiting to board flights to nowhere. But sometimes, when I'm processing tickets, and I see a passenger with too stiff movements and clothes that don't quite fit right, I wonder, how many of them have already boarded? How many flights carry invisible passengers wearing visible clothes? And where do they go when they land?